Jake, my boyfriend.
It's snowing.
Winter is coming in.
We have a real connection, a rare and intense attachment. I've never experienced anything like it. I'm thinking of ending things.
Huh?
What?
Did you say something?
I don't think so.
Weird.
I'm visiting Jake's parents for the first time. He hasn't been my boyfriend for very long.
They really are looking forward to meeting you.
I think of ending things.
Hello? We're here.
Here they come.
Jake has told us so much about you.
He's told me so much about both of you, too.
And you came anyway? Jake tells me you're studying quantum psychics.
Physics.
Really?
But there's just something profoundly wrong here.
Are you okay?
Yeah, I think of ending
I
things.
am so glad Jake has found someone.
And now for something completely different. That's all I've wanted through this pandemic. Something new, something to look forward to. And we got a taste of that with the Film Board in July when we did Hamilton. But even that was kind of the film representation of a show that had been out for years. So this month, we're going deep. Welcome to the Film Board from the next reel on True Story FM. We spoil movies. And quite honestly, I'm feeling a little spoiled myself with this one. Netflix released a new movie from Charlie Kaufman on Friday, September 4th called I'm Thinking of Ending Things. And its impressionistic ideas are creatively consistent with much of what you can expect from his work. So I can't wait to talk about it with my dudes right here. At the next reel, when the movie ends, our conversation begins, and you can get in on our conversation by connecting with us on Discord. We host a fun and fabulous server there that serves as a platform for discussions about all of our shows and other entertaining factoids and debates from the entertainment industry as a whole. Joining us there will connect you to fun film fans from around the world. Check out all the details at thenextreel.com. There's a bright blue button at the bottom of the front page, which will push you through to the not-so-hidden side door. There is no secret knock necessary. Okay, let's introduce our hosts with some foundational talk about the way you view your Kaufman movies. There's so many different ways to view what he presents in his art. So what is your favorite Kaufman film, and how do you gear up to watch one of these stories? Hello, Steve Sarmento.
Oh, I think aren't we all in agreement that Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind is like pinnacle Kaufman? It is for me. And then, but right after that adaptation,
Okay.
to gear up for Kaufman, it's like you got to put your brain into overdrive for me on this because it's just like I have to be so focused. I have to be in a distraction-free environment because there's so much stuff that I'm going to have to pay attention to and be like teasing apart as I'm watching this movie go on. So it's like lots of caffeine and just like, yes, I'm focused. Here we are. Go.
Caffeine's not a bad idea. I was thinking maybe hallucinogenics, but yeah, no, caffeine is a good one too. And I agree with you about Eternal Sunshine. How about you, Tommy Handsome? What's your Kaufman joy?
That's me. Hi, fun film fans. My favorite one is probably his most accessible because of the hands of George Clooney, but his Confessions of a Dangerous Mind.
Oh,
he didn't direct it, but he wrote it. And I think that movie is masterful, especially as a first-time director that George Clooney did. I thought it was so much fun.
Yeah, okay.
And that's sort of a nice beginner's guide into how much he wants to play with the medium, how all rules are kind of broken, and also what he does so much in this movie and other ones. He brings so much attention to the one thing that most directors and editors try to not do. You're constantly aware that you're watching a movie. He's bringing attention to the artifice, and he's saying, you're watching a movie, and still watch what I can get away with. And I think that's thrilling and fascinating.
Yeah, the rules are there are no rules. That's definitely how I feel about all Charlie Kaufman movies. I am JJ, and Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind is in my, I think, top 5 movies lists of all time. Not even just on Flickchart, but with all the things. And when looking at that movie in particular, I think I tend to take it kind of as it's told, right? I mean, it's, of course, a fictional idea about something that you can do. But in general, I take the fiction as it's told in a very kind of science fiction-y kind of way. I don't know if there's any symbolic or unreal characters in that one, but I don't know. I definitely don't think that can be said for his other films. And we'll get into that a little bit tonight, too. The main show on the next reel did a whole Charlie Kaufman series, and it included Eternal Sunshine, Adaptation, which you mentioned, Steve, and Being John Malkovich. And Steve, you and I talked about Anomalisa, which is another Kaufman on Trailer Rewind. All those shows are available for you in our audience on our website in the back catalog, but this is the first time that we've been able to discuss a Charlie Kaufman movie on the film board, and that's super exciting, even in the middle of pandemic. So with all that said, and with all the different ways that you can view this kind of cinema, let's get into it. What were your initial impressions of this movie? I'm thinking of ending things, Tommy Handsome.
Every time you use that sentence in context, it makes me dial 9-1, and then I'm like, right. It's just the title.
Right.
I went into this movie with extremely high expectations. The idea of Charlie Kaufman taking a psychological thriller, maybe that had scary elements or something, I couldn't think of someone more that I would want to watch their take on it. At times, I thought it was very confusing. I did think it was long. I thought it was jarring. I thought at times it was frustrating. And overall, I think it is, if it's not, it is very close to a masterpiece.
Yeah.
I thought this movie was incredible for a movie that is so difficult and asks so much while sometimes giving so little and so much. I was captivated.
Interesting. Yeah. That's amazing. And of course, you started that with a whole bunch of negative connotative words. So I'm interested to see how that all played out for you when you're watching as well. How did it hit you, Steve?
I will say I started with the title, and I'm wondering what are things? I'm ending things. So what are the things that are ending? Is there more than one thing that's ending? And there's lots of things in this film.
There are lots of things.
Several.
Several points I'm watching this and I'm like, I get this reference. I'm seeing this. Oh, did he make this for me? Because there's so much intellectual stuff that's going on that I thought I give me more of this. I'm right there with Tommy. This is a brilliant piece of work. It is not easily accessible. It doesn't provide a lot of answers, but I love those types of things because it's really about giving the viewer something to think about and not telling them what to think about it. Because I don't know what to tell anybody to think about this movie because you just have to experience it. That's where I am.
Yeah, and what a treat to get something like this in the face of all of this weird media that we've been exposed to through the pandemic, right? I mean, it's intense and it's voluminous in everything that it's trying to bring to us. And I don't know that I ever felt like he was making it for me, Steve, but I do feel like one after another, I was being tested on the different references and then trying to figure out where I fit in the mind of this story. And I love that. I don't think, I love that you guys are following it like it's a masterpiece. I think there's a lot of people who are going to do that, who are going to feel that way about it. For me, I think
it's also going to be extremely polarizing.
Right. And definitely that too. I got a feeling like, maybe like an Inside Llewyn Davis kind of thing where, you don't really...
Mother.
Yeah, and Mother's a great one too, where it's mostly, it's art. It's interpretive art. Yes. And for me, it's not going to go in my masterpiece category, but I recognize the importance of a movie like this. And there's so much to talk about. So I love getting into movies like this. So I'm going to try to... I don't know how to give a synopsis of this movie because
good luck.
I can talk about the general things that we see and hear on the screen, but so much of it feels like symbolic or opposed to the actual stuff that we're looking at. So our interpretation of what happened here may be more interesting than what we're presented with. So generally speaking,
we believe in you, JJ.
Thank you. Generally speaking, a young woman, I'm just going to leave it at that. A young woman is traveling to her relatively new boyfriend's house to meet his parents for the first time. Her name is unclear because it changes a lot over the course of the film. His name is Jake, period. And there's also an old man who is a high school janitor, and he is connected to this story, the young woman and the Jake, in odd ways. He's watching them at times. He hears what they hear at times. His story is kind of shown in parallel to theirs with these unexplained connections. The young woman is our narrator, and her thoughts are shared with us, and seemingly with Jake, too. They're in a blizzard, and it's difficult to say when reality becomes difficult for us to understand in the audience. But once we get to the parents' farmhouse, so many incredibly creepy and confusing things take place. The people, the place, the perceptions of everything begin to constantly shift in a real unsettling play. And eventually the couple then hits the road for home. You see, I skipped a lot of stuff there because I don't know how to talk about that stuff. But eventually the couple hits the road for home, and then they stop at a roadside 24-hour ice cream stand. Yes, in the middle of the night and in a blizzard. Ice cream stand, middle of the night, blizzard. Yeah. And then they take a strange turn toward Jake's high school, where the unexplained connections between the story of the couple and the old man begin to converge. The film ends with some fantastic sequences linking things together in artful ways that put the audience in a creative mode to explain the reality of the story to themselves in whatever ways seem to fit best for them. And that's us. Wait, we're the audience. I was talking about it as other people, but that's us.
Right.
So there's so much vague on that, and that's way on purpose because I mostly want to hear how you guys explain the story reality to yourselves in the midst of all this. So what the heck is going on here? Who wants to start? Anyone?
Steve, I can go unless Steve would like to go.
No. Go ahead, Tommy. Let's hear what you've got on this.
Pick a person, pick an angle. I'll throw it out there.
Thing.
Hot take.
I won't go into everything, but I believe that none of this has happened.
Okay. None of
this
what?
Is all.
Define your this. I need no pronouns today.
Got it.
Yeah.
Any of the any of the drive to the parents, of the thing that happened at the parents' house, except for moments when they're not talking to quote the girl to the woman, end quote. Everything like that. That it's all taking place in an old man's mind.
Okay. That
the high school janitor is Jake.
Got it.
And he is an old man filled like in whatchamacallit, Inception. He's an old man dying alone, filled with regret.
Yeah.
And he is thinking about all the different things that he got wrong. He has made I won't talk about the woman yet because we can go step by step.
Sure.
But then he has written this sort of fantasy that is a sad fantasy because everything is mixing together from a number of different parts in his life. All of the memories, everything is all merging together, as would happen in the way that when she is constantly sometimes like losing her train of thought, like she's skipping over subjects and stuff. Even if you're trying to make up a daydream or a fantasy or having a dream or a nightmare, it's really hard to stay on task.
Right.
And so I think what we're seeing is a very unsuccessful fantasy come to a logical end as an old man dies alone.
Ooh,
in a car.
Interesting. So young couple story, the key takeaway that I want to say from that is young couple story is sad fantasy of old man high school janitor. And
the clincher is when that they meet together when we find out, I think, the real story of who she is, at least physically. I believe. Well, we won't talk about the girl yet.
Yeah. Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay. So sad fantasy, and then maybe it sounds like there's some.
The thing about the Dark Tower is he had the Horn of Eld. No, I don't. I remember I went on like a 10-minute rant during that. I won't talk about that. But yeah, I have a fairly strong theory. But yeah,
go
ahead.
I love it. Okay, Steve, are you in full support of where Tommy is taking us there, or do you have some maybe subtle differences that you want to chime in with here?
There may be some subtle differences. It's hard to tell because there's a lot to unpack, and as we delve into more detail, that may be where we see where we're in alignment or there's some differences. But for me, I mean, I agree. This is really a meditation on regret, looking back on past choices, loneliness. And I think overall what we see in a lot of Charlie Kaufman is this longing and desire to connect, to have a relationship, and overthinking things and other obstacles getting in the way. And the failure of that, whether that has to do with personal failings or social structures that are someone that is an outsider or feels like an outcast, and their inability to connect with people. So I think it becomes clear by the end that the janitor is Jake, who Lucy is,
Louisa,
Yvonne. or Yvonne, or yes, or
Amy.
or Amy. Not clear to me, but we can get into that, because I think that I will agree that everything in the car is in the janitor's mind, but I think it may be based on something in his past that he's trying to reinvent or think about. If I had done things differently, would things be in a different place here? And so that's where I am with that. There's, yes, clearly he had family, then lived done the farm, and I think there was a lot of touchstones in his real life that parallel this. But for me, it's really about coming back to the title of the decision that Jake is making at the end when, as the janitor, to end things. And I think that what we're seeing play out is his sort of subconscious having a dialogue with itself about his past regrets that's feeding into the decision that he's making at the end of the film.
Right. And I think, so that gets us into kind of the next question, right? And I think that we're kind of talking along the same lines here. The question of where reality is and where reality isn't in terms of his memory versus what he's conjuring in his mind is, I think, where that's where people are going to have subtle differences. And where in the things that I've read online, I mean, there's room for it. When I say I have a theory, I don't mean I figured it out.
Yeah, I have my interpretation.
There's
and that's
multiple.
I guess that's my point about bringing up the stuff I've read online, because there are journalists who are coming up here and saying that X conversation is when Y thing was happening, and I think it's impossible to watch. I would assert that it's impossible to watch a Kaufman movie and say that in general, because I think really the art of what's presented in his movies is to say, here, what do you think? Right. And that's why I think this is just such a perfect movie for us to talk about on this podcast, because it matters more what we think than what is actually on screen or what we say is happening.
I think it has a lot akin to David Lynch.
Yeah.
Where a lot of times when you're trying to figure out a David Lynch film, I think it's sometimes very valid to say it's more of a tone poem. Meaning it's less about got it, Mulholland Drive.
Right.
I mean, anyone that says got it, Mulholland Drive, back up. There's a lot of cool theories and stuff out there, but also it's just about look what I can do to make you feel these different things with the most innocuous. A walk behind Mulholland Drive, a walk behind a diner is one of the scariest things I've ever seen in cinema history, and almost nothing happens.
Exactly.
It's a tone poem. It's about what does it feel like. One of the themes of this movie, I think, is also deterioration, and that's from the words. Say the name of the poet. I can't. Wordsworth poem, which I actually know because I studied in school. The whole thing is about how pretty much when I was a kid, everything was magical and amazing, and then now I can't get that feeling back.
Right.
Everything, same with Eternal Sunshine. He's really big on as you age, things just fall apart, things die away.
Yeah.
Much like, and it's not just physical, it's memories, it's love, it's all of that stuff.
Well, and I think you bring up the Mulholland Drive walk behind the trash bin. I think there's some parallels here for this. And I will say for the viewers of movies who are like me, I was terrified through most of this movie. And there was really nothing to be terrified of. It's really that tone poem that you're talking about that like, it's just an unsettling feeling, and he isn't there to scare you. He's just putting you in that mode. And it's important to the way that you perceive this movie. I don't dislike the way that I went through this movie. I was excited to see it, and I'm excited to have seen it, but I was scared the whole way.
Yeah, I'm glad, because I was worried about you, because I'm a horror aficionado, as we know, and I was very uncomfortable. I didn't realize where he had put me emotionally. This is just a very detailed thing until once we're finally, in the middle of the film, like the standout of the film is everything inside the house with the parents.
Right.
And then that smash cut to him putting on the tire chains.
Yeah.
I jumped out of my seat like a cartoon character. I was like, ah! And like nothing happened. I didn't know how tightly wound I was from just this kind of weirdness until it slammed back to reality. And it was like a killer with a knife came out of my own apartment. It was crazy.
With tire chains.
Yeah,
but yeah, so
a tire chain knife, the worst kind. That can't cut a sandwich.
So we've all talked a little bit about what the young woman is, and I think she's our narrator, the young woman. So we talk about, she's our narrator, but she is also representative of something from Jake or from old janitor's past too. But she's also Jake, right? I mean, that's some of the most eerie stuff when she's realizing that she is him, she is he as they go through this. So to you, when you're, as the audience surrogate, you're the young woman here. Who is the young woman to you?
It's Jake. She never existed.
Right.
She existed in physical form. She's an amalgamation of all of the women that he never found or never had the courage to meet. I think that the talk when she changes into the woman, when she's talking to old Jake in the high school, saying, there was just this creep at this bar staring at me. That's the real her, as much as he can possibly tell. Because that's why the name keeps changing. That's why the career keeps changing based on the conversations they're having. She's a physicist, then she's a painter, then she's a poet. After us 3 scenes earlier saying she doesn't care for poetry. It's constantly changing. And then inside the house, which can represent Jake's mind, you see where all of this stuff came from. Why is she doing this huge, where did her paintings come from? We see the actual painter that did those. Why is she going on this different kind of smoking rant about Nick Cassavetes? I assume that is from a Pauline Kael review, because you see that book in his thing. Yes. I actually own that book.
Nice.
And it's interesting, that review of the film isn't in that book. He just used the book that has the biggest Pauline Kael, if that's how you, because I'm a big fan of her work, so much so I don't have any idea if that's how you spell her or say her last name. But everything, it's so dense in that everything that she says, that's why I feel so comfortable saying that she's an amalgamation, is everything, and the fact that he can seemingly hear her inner monologue sometimes.
Right.
Yes.
That he has created her. And he tries to come up with a fantasy of this is what it could have been like if I had slipped my number into that woman's purse. There's like 4 different versions of the same date, and but he's just not able to hold on to it.
Right. And I think the other big clue to that is that the woman, for a brief couple sentences, switches in physical appearance.
To the Robert Zemeckis woman.
Yes.
To the woman that's from the Robert Zemeckis little rom-com, which to me connected back to early on. So counter to the whole, I'm going to spew out a Pauline Kael, critique of a John Cassavetes film. Much earlier, she talks about that she doesn't like movies because basically it puts the ideas in your head. And for me, we see Jake, the old janitor, watching the Red Line Diner movie with this woman, and that idea of this is the ideal romantic connection, and that woman now appears in the car with him.
Right.
She shifts appearance. And so to me, I'm trying to get to this ideal, and for a moment, that movie ideal becomes manifest there in his attempt to figure out what the ideal relationship is. And so for me, that cemented the fact that's who this woman is. She's a construct because so much keeps changing. Because I was trying to track, I don't know if you've noticed, her sweater changes color.
So much. She becomes more matronly. She changes a number of different times.
The jacket, the sweater comes off at some point. So changes in the physical appearance. So yes, very much that's the young woman, which I found it was interesting to have her as our unreliable narrator to start, but very quickly, as soon as I saw that Jake was hearing what's going on in her head, I thought, okay, there's some type of connection between these two. We'll delve into that as the story goes along. But yes, it became very clear that we got set up with the ultimate unreliable narrator. The person we're identifying with is a totally fabricated person.
This is where I want to push on that a little bit, because I think that instead of thinking of the characters as individual characters. Now, this is everyone that's in his mind.
Right.
I want to consider the environment as just the slippery thoughts of this old man.
Right.
The reason why I have difficulty thinking of her as an amalgamation or thinking of her as a purposeful, right, so someone that he created, is as in her role as the unreliable narrator, the sort of contrarian thought of, I'm thinking of ending things. So she is this sort of, and they talk about viruses, right? Viruses just want to live. And like this thing, she's a thought that, and they go into this is the first, minute of the movie. They talk about how once you have that thought, it doesn't go away. And they talk about that really the only honest thing in the world is thoughts, because you can't fake a thought. You can act anything. So what the young woman exists as is not necessarily a fantasy. To me, not a fantasy and not this amalgamation. She touches on all that stuff because this is why her character has no bounds, right? She is Slippery. She is Jake. She's all of these things. But what she exists as is this thought that's now been planted in his mind that it's time to die, right? And so through this, there's the idea that this thought has now become part of his mind, and it moves
and it
through
manifests
all of these
through
different
a
pieces. Yes.
Girl.
And it manifests through this girl, and she has all these different experiences, and she has all these relating to all of the memories and thoughts of Janitor Jake's mind of like meeting his parents and meeting his memories and experiencing his shame and experiencing all this stuff. But really, she's just sort of and this is where they start talking about time and how time travels. And at one point when they stop, we're jumping all around here. We're just like a Kaufman movie in what we're doing. But they get to the all night ice cream place, and third girl says, "You don't have to go forward." Right. And now instead of thinking you can stay here, and then if you think of that character as a thought, the thought of moving towards death or death becoming the old Janitor Jake, it's just an alternative view of what's happening through all this, and really trying to an old man trying to make sense of all the different things that are happening in his mind, including all those emotions and all those memories as well.
And if you're making a world up for that moment, it brings up the idea of if you have a dream and all those people in your dream believe they're real, and you wake up, what happens to them?
Yeah.
That's terrifying. You're trying to desperately hold on to, but that's him also. I think it's also him just not being good at having a fantasy, because you can see he turns into a teenager at that ice cream store. He goes back to what he was. And with just smiles, these monstrously depicted mean girls that were seen in the play. That we saw earlier. It's the whole world is constantly revolving and eating itself in different ways, which is really fascinating. I do want to, it is a sidestep, so maybe we can punt it to later or never talk about it if it's not interesting. But there is a real meta conversation going on, brought very clear by that fake Robert Zemeckis movie clip from when males write about females or think about females in romantic situations or romantic life or project, they put them in horrible situations. That scene at the Red Line Diner, the fake scene at the Red Line Diner, is it has all the trappings of a modern romantic comedy, and it is monstrous. She needs that job.
It ruins her life.
He stalks her.
Right.
And then she goes, he very clearly, she yells, he stalks her. He gets rewarded for it. And she loses her job. And then she's like, well, love wins out, idiot. Ha ha, we all win. Because she was the tough one, because she called him an idiot. No, he's monstrous. And Jake is being monstrous throughout a lot of the movie in this idealizing and forming and throwing through. There's creepiness of the fact that he's an adult in a high school, continually kind of having this idea of watching and getting caught watching and the shame. It's almost like also Charlie Kaufman, or probably the book. I haven't read the book, but just saying so much of this stuff is written by men, and the idea of men writing women can be incredibly harmful.
Yeah. Well, and you bring up the book. The book is different. And so what I've done something in looking at the book, and Charlie Kaufman did some very specific things here. The book and I don't want to. We aren't in the business of spoiling books, but I'm going to tell everybody what happens here in the book. The book presents
New
it
podcast,
right? Exactly. So the book presents it as a much more straightforward sequence of events with the characters. So much so that you don't ever meet janitor old man until the big reveal. And the big reveal is in the last 15 pages, last 30 pages of the book, where as the young woman is leaving the home, she's presented with a picture of Jake as a young boy. And as they're in the car and they're getting to their destination, she realizes that the picture is of herself. So, and nothing in the book, nothing before that is revealing about the fact that is there. It is held until the end. Now, what Charlie Kaufman
in the movie,
said,
we see the janitor looking out, seeing her in the very opening.
In the very opening.
Yeah.
And I think in what I've read from what Charlie Kaufman has said about it is that he found that the relationship of the old man to this, we could call it a fiction, or to this story was too interesting and too important to the story that he wanted to tell. So that's how it's different from
he
the
didn't
book.
want to save it for like a
right,
like a Twilight Zone episode.
Exactly. It wasn't meant to be that. It was, what did you call it, Tom? A tone poem. And he wanted to put it out that way. And I think it's consistent with his work. And I think it really does it. It does it well. You guys, Tommy, you talked about it. It scared you a little bit. Steve, did you get scared at all when you were watching this thing?
No, I wouldn't say I'm scared, but it is unsettling.
We all know you're masculine, Steve.
No, but I said
I've never been scared in my life.
It's the dream logic stuff that comes into play where it's just very unsettling. I can see where it puts you in that uneasy place because things aren't operating the way they normally would when they arrive at the house, and we've seen Mom waving from the upper window.
Creepy wave.
It takes
so long.
So long. And she keep going. And that sets a weird tone. And then they get in the house and
they don't come downstairs.
We're here. They don't come downstairs. They don't come downstairs. They don't come downstairs. There's that weird door with the scratches on it and all that. So what's downstairs? Okay, there's that. Then we have dinner, and then suddenly, people start disappearing. That she was in a room with people, and now they're not there. So now I'm getting into okay, this is a little creepy, weird, supernatural thing, but it wasn't scary, but it was this sense of unease and dread that things are not right here. And I think that goes to the tone poem piece of everything that the janitor Jake is working through is a very unsettling thing. And I think that is the right mood to have for this, but we don't get the release of the scare. It just keeps building and building this just awkwardness, and it just keeps going on. And we see creepy things like Toni Collette's weird infected toe for no reason, but just that it's
at the table.
Weird.
I forgot about that.
Probably because Jake is ashamed by it.
Yes,
and
exactly.
He's like, I brought her. He's just bad at his own fantasy because he's too filled with regret and shame that he keeps undercutting himself. I love. It makes you rethink all the times that characters interrupt themselves when they're about to say something too much, and then he goes, "Aha! They're finally here," and no one's coming down the stairs. He's cutting off his subconscious in the way that, if you're anxious, you're like, I don't want to think about that, so I'm going to think about something else. It's so interesting.
Well, and I want to go back to the points that I want to take two things from something that each of you have said, because Tommy, you described the farmhouse as potentially a metaphor for janitor Jake's mind. And then Steve, you bring up there's two parts in particular where the young woman ends up alone. One time is she goes to the window to see the blizzard and turns around in the living room. And the other time is when they're at the dining room at the table, and the camera moves to the kitchen and then slowly eliminates everyone from the scene except for the young woman. And then the next shot that we have is shot in reverse at the young woman, center of the screen, alone. No voices, just here. And I think, and the reason why I want to bring that up is because that is some of that sort of tone poem, scary, like what the heck is going on here. But then I want to put it in the context of the thing that I said earlier, which is if she represents the negative thought of, I'm thinking of ending things, and she is left alone in his mind at those terrifying moments.
And she's alone in the basement.
And she's alone in the basement where she's rediscovering the paintings, and they weren't mine, they were someone else. Literally the hair on my legs is standing up right now.
And all of the that's where she finds the the shame of the fact that maybe he's a janitor because she just
Right.
pulls out all what's later discovered as the overalls
Yeah.
of him.
Maybe she's shame. Maybe
Yeah.
she represents the discovery of shame within Janitor Jake. I don't know. This is where I'm rolling with this.
Yeah.
Love that. No, I mean,
Yes.
left alone, she could be, he's trying to make her into his ideal, but also left alone with your own thoughts. You cannot control them.
Right.
They're the
And then-
worst.
And if she is the
that's
ideal,
fantastic.
and then you get later in the story when they have their romantic moment, right? And then immediately he's shocked into, I can't do that because you are shame, right?
Right.
Like, oh gosh,
Yeah.
there's so much to go with that.
Yes.
Wow. Like, I think people
I
who love
never
movies should
thought,
see this.
I'm so glad you brought that up. I never thought
Yes.
about the idea of scenes when an unreliable narrator that doesn't exist is alone in the scene. He's controlling / not controlling it. That is really smart. I love that idea. That makes me want to watch it again. There's so many reasons I want to watch this movie again.
No, okay, so that concept of shame, that explains something really important. So because when they are being physically intimate there and it's jarring, there's that quick cut to the janitor looking through. Into something. And clearly he's not looking at them.
Right.
Because he's not looking out the window. He's probably in the high school looking at something in a locker room, I'm assuming. But again, that would tie into the shame piece again of that, because it's
a shameful memory, right?
A shameful memory of something. And that was one of the things that was
It is
really,
kind of a weird Porky's-ish
yes,
hole
no,
in
yes,
a wall.
it is, because it surprised me because
and there's no way
we
that Jesse Plemons could have seen him from the car.
No,
like, it's
exactly,
just
because he just said, "Oh, somebody's watching us," and I'm like, "There's nobody around." And to me, that was clearly that we were crossing the barrier between their reality as these conscious thoughts and what's going on physically with the janitor. So that was something I was trying, but that concept of shame really helps tie that together. That's
he's
good.
having. I think he's having a final mental breakdown.
Yes.
In his car. Yeah.
It's a death rattle, right? I mean, that's what we're
Yes.
dealing with. And so we jump to the end, and there's so much crazy stuff
I
that
love
happens.
the end. Once we're in the high school, things become so much fun for me.
Well, fun is an interesting word with the dance and the ribbons of blood and and all these different things. The one thing, it's so much that happens in it that I don't quite remember the order of events, to be honest. I remember, Jake getting lost, and then young woman having the conversation with the janitor, and then they reunite and have the dance, but then I don't remember when we move to the acceptance speech moment. But we get to this acceptance speech moment where Jake is on stage and his mom is up there too, which is creepy as all get out for me with my mommy issues. But and they're on the stage with Oklahoma. Oklahoma is throughout this whole thing, and then he gives a speech, which I found out in reading is the actual speech from A Beautiful Mind.
I knew I recognized it. I had no idea.
It's literally the same.
I knew it was
speech.
from something, but I was like, that's not Pauline Kael. But I was like, that's from a thing.
And the shots are lined up in the same way from the speech.
Oh, really?
And the stand to the ovation is there too. And then you have all these, like, the people are made up in a really strange way, like really made to look fake and sort of like the asides and stuff. And I want to go back. I want to look at them side by side. One of the things that was interesting is that the credits.
A Beautiful Mind, of course.
Right?
It's all, nothing is real. It's all.
Yes.
I'm here because of all of you.
Right.
And what he's really saying is, you're all here because of me.
Exactly. So,
and I think that they're made up so fake is because all of the artifice is finally, it's stage makeup. All the artifice is like completely falling down. He's at his end. Yeah. He's giving a speech for a Nobel Prize. In no way could he have won. Like, everything is melting down. His mom is there from the cast of Oklahoma. Everyone looks so fake because he can't even pretend. He's been having so much trouble keeping this fantasy alive. He can't even have his dog shake off water right. And now, as he's in his final throes of, I love that. That's such a neat way to say, like, I'm barely able to keep this together.
Right.
Stage makeup shown in close up, makeup, which only looks good from far away in the audience.
Yes.
And he films it way up close.
Yeah,
what a
and
smart
the
way to do
credits.
it.
Now the credits say that they got permission to do that, but Kaufman
To do
said
what?
that he's to do the speech, to do the word for word speech from The Beautiful Mind and shots, the shots and everything.
Yeah.
But Kaufman said that he's never spoken with Ron Howard about it. So he's like, I think maybe the studio did it. I'm not sure.
Oh, sure.
Which I think is really interesting because then also in this article I read, they mentioned that the year A Beautiful Mind won was also the year that Adaptation was up.
Oh,
Against it in the Oscar.
It could be kind of seen as a slight against A Beautiful Mind,
right?
Yeah.
Yes. Oh yeah. But it ties thematically back to the conversation at the dinner table when they talk about there's married couples that have been brilliant together when
Curie.
Marie Curie. So for me when it was Nobel Prize I was like, oh okay, it's again that fantasy. It's connecting back to a seed that was planted earlier of. In this, when he's able to achieve his ideal relationship, he'll be able to do something as brilliant as winning the Nobel Prize. It's that whole piece
if it's a construct of his mind, then sure,
right?
Yeah,
sure, exactly.
But the fact that it was the same year as Adaptation
that's Kaufman
is so meta because the speech is partly like, I never thought that I'd be able to be here. That could be Kaufman saying, that was my shot.
Right.
So many
and it was
different ways
taken
you could
away.
look
So
at it.
now I'm imagining with
Yes.
And then
this is a good film to talk about.
Right? There's so much to it. And then, of course, he goes and he sings The Lonely Room from Oklahoma. Have you guys seen Oklahoma on stage?
No and no.
So,
but I know it's
Room,
not in the film.
No, well,
I've
so
never
the
heard
Lonely
that
Room
song
in particular
film.
is a bit controversial because it's the Oklahoma is this kind of weird. This is now my opinion, but I think it's kind of this weird sort of. It's a way of looking at the old way that we looked at things in the U.S. And we take the outcast and we kill him because we don't want that outcast like dealing with our pure relationships and stuff like that. So The Lonely Room is a really interesting song in the show because it actually, if you have performed it a certain way, it's made to sound like masturbation. And
you're talking about the original show, not this new.
Well, this is my point,
one.
right? So taking the original source material, looking at Oklahoma, they use that song to show why this outcast is so wrong for our leading lady in Oklahoma.
Okay.
Because he is evil. He has terrible thoughts about what he wants. And then our hero ends up, the town goes out and takes the outcast and gets rid of him.
What a sad song for him to want to sing.
And he performs it so well. And it's a really intense song in Oklahoma too, but it's controversial because it's this guy who lives in a shack and like it's all by himself like this. So and I don't know, I might not be remembering this right, but this is my interpretation from what I took from Oklahoma, where I was like, we try not to do that to people anymore, right? Is make them feel so alone and have to get rid of them because they're the other. But that's what Oklahoma says a lot of times. So it's so interesting because Oklahoma
that's what he did to himself at the Tulsa Shake Factory. He just walked in a corner that wasn't there.
Right.
The exact opposite of a corner. He made a corner to go turn around and walk in. Wow.
So there's so many things to talk about with this movie. I don't know if we even need to talk about Charlie Kaufman's direction or scripted because everything we end up talking about in terms of this is. But I want to pop to Jesse Plemons a little bit right away.
Okay.
As Jake, because Tommy, you mentioned when we were talking about these characters as thoughts, and what happens to the thoughts when the mind can't hold on to them.
Yeah.
Jesse Plemons' Black Mirror episode. That's exactly. What is it? It's the USS
Callister or something.
Callister. Yes. Where Jesse Plemons is creating a fantasy world, but those people in the fantasy world end up being characters, which I think is a really interesting throwback to something like that. I think he was perfect for this role. I've seen a lot of articles where people are like, why does everyone love Jesse Plemons so much? But he's a
magician.
He's unique.
Great.
Yeah. He's so special to have him in Hollywood. I'm really happy they cast him in this role.
And he's really neat because he's not traditionally good looking.
No.
And he's
sorry, I didn't mean to be so emphatic with that.
I know. Sorry, Jesse. Sorry, Jesse. I said traditionally. Boy, oh boy. But he's captivating
Yeah.
He always holds the thing. And it's neat to rewatch the movie in that she's traditionally beautiful.
Right.
He is not.
Yes.
And he, from the get-go, I was like, why is she with him?
Sure.
A little bit of like,
Right.
because it's not like he has a great personality.
No.
They just have tons of connection.
Right.
And that's it, because it's all fake.
Because they're all the same.
They're talking,
Yes.
someone talking to themselves. Yeah. But no, and the amount of time that he like wipes his hand in front of his face, he's getting rid of a thought or the shame that he has with his parents at dinner as they go in and out of the different ways that they were throughout their lives and devolve. Clearly the father had physical problems, the mother had mental problems, and then everything as it does falls apart and deteriorates. It was his different ways of throwing that, and then having huge freakouts, then having cry moments. And I thought the acting in this movie was phenomenal.
Perfectly subtle.
Yes.
Perfectly subtle
yes.
in all of that stuff.
I have to say, I was shocked, surprised that I did not recognize Jessie Buckley.
Who is she? I've never seen her before.
Well, JJ and I know her from Wild Rose that we talked about on Trailer Rewind.
Oh my goodness!
Yes, exactly.
Wow.
I've seen a movie with her, and how come you didn't recognize her? That's interesting.
Because she
plays
played
an Irish country music star.
Yes. Exactly. Yes.
Which is like a list of all of the strongest personality traits, accent wise.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I didn't. Yes. And then
Wow.
I'm watching this. I'm like, who is this? She seems familiar. Oh my gosh, this is Jessie Buckley that we talked about on Trailer Rewind with Wild Rose, because totally different. I did not recognize her at all.
No.
No. But all the performances in this, I love Toni Collette in this. They're just.
Yes.
I mean, the quick pivots. For me, the whole, the I guess you call it a punchline when she says, "Well, I guess I'm just not that much of a genius."
Oh,
right.
The whole
genius thing was loved that moment, and she just that whole dinner scene. Because I don't know if you noticed, nobody eats anything at all.
No, none of the food is touched.
None of the food is
and
touched.
They overserve the carrots.
Oh, yes.
The carrots become the carrots goes around to too many people more than once when no one's eating.
Yes.
Almost in a way that in a different movie you'd be like, "Oh, that's an editing mistake." But what it is it's a fantasy mistake.
Well,
exactly.
and the genius thing is really interesting too, because if you put it in the context of Jake's mind, it's probably just a pet peeve that stuck with him for so long.
Yes.
And I will say, while I didn't feel like this movie was written for me, if they would have dealt with the whole fallacy of having roll-agains in a trivia game, if they would have put that there, then
JJ hates it.
That would have been a movie written for me.
I've seen JJ lose games in real time because he refuses to roll again.
Never roll again. Always go for a question. Why roll again? Just answer the question. It's a trivia game. Okay. Anyway. So, but I vibed with the whole genius thing for sure.
Yeah.
And Toni Collette was amazing in it.
Yes.
David Thewlis, is that how you say his name? Is it Thewlis or Thewlis?
I'll go with that.
Yeah.
I know him from the Harry Potter movies.
Oh yeah.
And he was fantastic in this.
Oh, he's
so good.
So good.
Creepy
Everybody.
as all get out, but he was fantastic.
Yeah.
Yes. And I think the one moment of his that stuck with me was as he's aged and he's looking forward to the time when he will forget that he forgets things.
Right.
That whole thing, tied into, again, where I'm looking at this again as these are actual people from Jake's life, but this is also his subconscious, these different aspects of it. And there's a part of him that just is looking forward to forgetting everything, all the pain and all the hurt in his life. And I'm looking forward to getting to that decision that I will make where I will no longer have to remember these things.
Yep.
Oh, just so much.
Amazing stuff, all of it. Guy Boyd is listed as the janitor. I don't know him from anything. He's playing old man Jake. Do you guys know Guy Boyd at all?
He felt very not established, not even character actor. He felt very authentically.
They just hired a high school janitor.
Yeah,
almost. Yeah,
he's got a very long filmography, but it's
really?
It's mostly.
It's got to be side stuff, right?
Side stuff. Yeah. It's mostly that. But I think your point is well taken. I think they cast him perfectly in this. He wasn't, while he was our primary brain. He wasn't meant to be a primary character. And I think
Right.
the way he did what he did felt 100% authentic in everything that we saw on screen.
And he was saying to himself very softly, looking out the window in the very first scene, looking at the girl getting into a car. He was saying the thing that she was getting on the voicemails.
All my assumptions are right.
Right.
Is that from something? All my assumptions are right. Is that just I
don't know.
That was the part that I didn't. Other than like his real, almost Inception wise, his reality breaking into the fantasy. I wasn't able to completely put that together. That's something that is really open to interpretation.
So many things are references to other things.
Right.
I mean,
that's what I was wondering if it was from something.
I don't know that one. I think
that was fun. They brought up the David Foster Wallace book that you had me read.
That's what I was going to go into too. And that book, a supposedly fun thing that I'll never do again, is a really interesting book. And David Foster Wallace is a super interesting author, and to bring it up in context of this, which is potentially, depending on your interpretation, a suicidal thought that is presented to us as the young woman.
Oh, right.
And then for them to have the conversation about suicide and with David Foster Wallace, it's just
and again
fantastic.
With Charlie Kaufman, who is known as an incredibly dense writer that is very polarizing. If Charlie Kaufman, God forbid, were to commit suicide, it's almost like he's saying the story would be, that screenwriter that committed suicide.
Yeah, exactly.
The essay that they mentioned, again, it's another, out of all the essays that are in there, they picked the one where it's about what we see on the screen. And that whole constructed reality there that we then measure ourselves against. And then I think about now being Charlie Kaufman taking another level of it. Now he's giving us a movie to put as a construct to put thoughts our head, and how are we responding to those, and how are we measuring ourselves against this, and how he's pushing back against this. Let's just keep peeling the layers. I can't wait to go watch this again and again and again, because I think there's more to dig into each time. I'm
so glad, just real quick, I know that we're not done, and this sounds like a wrapping up, but it's not supposed to. I'm so glad that there is a world where I was like, masterpiece, and you guys both were like, what? Because a lot of people, not because you guys aren't smart, but it's very smart people look at this movie and be like, pretentious, up your own ass trash.
Oh, well, I don't feel like it's like that. That's
an empty thing. But so I'm just so glad that we're all psyched about it.
Yeah.
So that's just exciting. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was going to say it has that potential, but I think for me, it's what keeps it from going over that edge is there. I can't pinpoint it, but there's that internal consistency, because you can go into dream world where just logic goes out the window, but there's a center that holds it all together. So I can't understand why it seems logical, why it makes sense, but there's an internal consistency to everything that holds all of this nonsense together in a way.
That's a neat way to say it. Yeah.
That you can say, okay, this is of quality, because it's not just, let's throw all the rules out the window.
And then what if this happened?
Right.
It's all leading towards a theme.
There's an entirely different set of rules that is holding this all together, that when you see the echoes across, that's one of that tells me that there's an intentional plan for all of this. And it may not be transparent, maybe very opaque to lots of people, but there's what I call the echoes. And you see the bouncing back and forth across the stories. Right. That's what holds it together for me.
Well, that is told visually in this story, though, too.
Yeah.
I mean,
yes.
One of the things that's interesting is that, Tommy, one of the comments, one of the adjectives you used when you first described it is that it was long. So much of this movie happens in a car ride.
This movie is a play.
Yes.
This movie is the most cinematic play I've ever seen.
Right. So, and we're in the car with them.
Yes.
And of course we're isolated because of the snow, but and so the frames keep getting tighter and tighter, and what we view, I mean, we're doing this sort of movement back and forth between driver and passenger and spending time with a black screen with very little being said. There's times where we frame a shot of the young woman from outside the vehicle.
Yes.
And a back passenger window.
Yes.
I mean, there's really a beautiful visual story being told here about what exists in a mind if you choose to look at it that way. The cinematographer here is Lucas Zal. He's a Polish cinematographer and hasn't really done a lot of stuff yet. Definitely not a lot of American releases. I was so excited with the way that this movie was shot because, again, like you talk about, Tom, it's a cinematic play. I saw a message too that it was written on a 1:33 aspect ratio, and I'm not smart enough to know what that means.
That's square.
Yeah, the Daily Beast described it as boxy.
Lighthouse. Yeah.
Oh, the Lighthouse was that way too?
Yes. Or no, the Lighthouse I think was even more severe because it was even it was using an aspect ratio that doesn't even exist now because we didn't know how to do things. But yes, it's the idea of it's the negating of widescreen.
Yeah,
right.
And I didn't notice, but I felt
you didn't notice.
Well, I didn't. I mean, I didn't. It's not like I said, "Oh, this is something strange." I had the tone poem of like, "Oh, I was here."
Right.
Yeah,
I felt so claustrophobic.
Right.
Yes.
The whole time.
We're so focused. He doesn't allow you to wander visually from left side of the frame because you're just in that box, and it's just going to keep you focused on everything he wants you to see and keeps your vision right in the tunnel. It works so well.
Brilliant filmmaking.
In the car ride, especially in the beginning when they're having trouble connecting, when I still thought it was literally like a date movie, they're almost never in the same frame at the same time, which is unheard of. What do you do if you are like reading a play and you're reading both characters? You can't be in both places. You have to go back and forth, back and forth.
You move from one side of the table to the other before you say the next line.
Right. But that's what he's sort of doing.
Yeah.
Mentally, and the editing is incredible. It's incredibly well shot. Even that my favorite shots were the ones from like a caddy corner where they would always be filmed past the guy to see the other person, but instead he covered up the rest of the frame with the car frame, and then where you would see the other person, you can't because of the aspect ratio.
So there was nothing there. Right.
I love what Steve just said about there's no wandering. If you're directing something in your head, by definition, there's no wandering. You can only focus your attention on one thing.
That's the dream. Yeah.
Until it sort of starts going away. Yeah.
Right.
Love it.
I love it. That's very smart, Steve.
In addition to that, there was no... We talk about in the show a lot of times. We'll bring up music and we'll say, "Oh, the music took me out of it," or "I didn't notice the music." There was so much no music in this movie where I was like listening for something and it was just not there. And it has a lot to do with that same thing you're saying from the visual standpoint of focusing on what you're looking at the moment. There was nothing to take you out of what was on screen at the time, including aurally for your ears.
Right.
And what it definitely did was highlight when there was music. When they did have sound effects or when they did have all of a sudden the score chime in, you were like, "Oh, wait, what does this mean?" And I thought that was really expert, the way that they handled that in the film too.
Because he was bringing in, you saw him probably rewatching cartoons that he'd seen as a kid.
Yes.
It's all from primary sources of things that he had when he was growing up. That he's just sort of like very awkwardly, or by the end when he has the hallucination through the car window of the actually fairly horrific Tulsi stand commercial. None of that's real, but it's all made up. But I mean, even if that was the commercial, what a terrible way to do it. She creates an ice cream person so the kid behind her can step on it. Like it's all about fragility. It's all about deterioration. It's all of this. It's like how a layperson would use music in their mind if they were trying to be Robert Zemeckis.
Right. If they were Jake, if they were Jen or Jake.
If they were Jake, yeah.
So then the biggest spoiler to talk about and what do you think? Do you think that he did commit suicide? Do you think that he had some sort of attack? I think it's pretty clear that he is dead inside the car at the end. Because he had this thought that said, "I was thinking of ending things," and we do see him deteriorate mentally to some degree.
Right.
What do you think? What's the end?
Well, I mean, I think he clearly goes through. I mean, because this is one of the things that I learned way back when I was a kid in Boy Scouts about when people start to freeze, they actually do take their clothes off because they get
really hot.
Right, exactly.
To
So
start
when
a
I saw
fire,
that-
Jack London. That's where I learned that. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So I saw that and I'm like, okay, this is the end for him. The hypothermia, all that. He's, and then everything with the pig, that's, to me, that's, in his head, in his mind, all that. And so, yeah, what we see there is the car, with Janitor Jake's corpse, frozen in the truck. That's where
100% agree.
Yeah.
He took off all of his clothes in the car and froze to death. And he will only be found once whoever is doing the shoveling during the ending credits finally wonders, why is this car here?
Right. I did read something interesting about the pig. They wanted to use a real pig for that.
Oh.
But they found out when they were setting it up, two things. They found out that pigs freak out on slippery surfaces. So the trainers didn't think they could keep a pig doing the walk thing. And then they also found out that pigs actually cannot turn their heads. And so since we have this talking pig that's turning its head to talk to Janitor Jake.
Interesting.
That they weren't going to be able to do it with a real pig. So so they decided to go with the animated version.
I prefer the animated, especially because the animated has such a retro animation look. It matches some of that earlier animation. He has just devolved.
It makes it feel like a completely thing. Tommy, you mentioned the shoveling in the closing credits. If people don't listen to these credits, because most people I don't really think do, especially with Netflix movies, it's really special.
Yes.
I had gone to start kind of writing what we were going to talk about tonight, but I left it on in the background, the credits on in the background, and it's like perfect. It's a perfect explanation of what the end of the movie is, to just let the credits run and listen to the desolation that exists after this man has passed. I think it's
such a peaceful. They kept talking about how things. There's a refrain of sitting alone in a car with nothing happening. Isn't it peaceful? Isn't it peaceful? Right. We finally get that. At the end, because it's never peaceful during the movie.
Right.
No.
Because probably if someone is slowly dying in a car, freezing to death while going finally insane, everything's busy being too confusing. We get the peacefulness that he was looking for during the ending credits. I'm saying what you said, but I like what you said so much that I'm saying it louder, so I get credit for it.
Well, I love snow, and I think snow is magic. And one of my favorite things about snow is after a snowfall, how the world is quiet.
Yes.
Oh, because everything's blanketed or buffeted.
And what an amazing thing for Kaufman or whoever's choice it was to set up a mic and say, here's the quiet in the world after.
Yeah.
What a brave choice.
Yeah. Steve, in our Discord, you had shown some of the early Rotten Tomatoes things for the 3 big releases this weekend.
Yes.
What did you find, and what do you think that means based on what you've seen here?
Well, I think it means what it's going to mean is that critics love this, and people are going to see this getting ranked really high, and they're going to watch it, and this is not a film for everybody, but it is sitting at an 82% on Rotten Tomatoes compared to Tenet, which was around 75%, and I think Mulan was around 80 or 81. So this was rating higher than either of those, which really, really surprised me to see it ranking. I'm pleased. I love it. I think it's well deserved, but I think it's gonna create problems when people go to look for something and like, oh, this was really top rated. And as we talk about on Trailer Rewind, this is not a film for everybody. There's a specific audience for this type of film.
This is going to be the most half-watched film in America for at least a couple days.
Well, especially because it is that long too. It is. It's over 2 hours. I mean, you're going to have to make an investment for this one. I have not seen Tenet. I totally want to see Tenet, but I am not going to a theater anytime soon, so I don't know when I'm going to be able to see it. I know that some people out there are brave enough to do that right now. I'm not there. I did see Mulan, though. I did pay for the... and this is the thing.
You get 2 months of special access.
Is it just 2 months, or is it 2 months ongoing unless you cancel?
Wait. It's September, October.
What are we saying? Special access to what?
3 months.
To Disney Plus.
Because December 4th, everybody else gets access to it.
Right. So the thing is, what they gave you is they said $30 to see Mulan, but it wasn't just $30 for that. It was paying for this premier access thing. And what? Now I will tell you that what my credit card registered it as.
See it early? You mean? Just explain the little.
Yeah.
Okay,
so it's premier access, but the way that my credit card registered it is that it was a new subscription. So my thought is what Disney Plus is doing is moving from their $7.99 model
Yeah.
up to a $30 a month model. And I didn't really read the fine print, but I'm assuming that it's going to keep this way for me. But you know what? I'm actually fine with that, because if I get a chance to see Black Widow, if I get a chance to get, Loki and Falcon and the Winter Soldier and all the different Mandalorian, if I get access to that stuff, I'm willing to pay $30 a month for it. So this is actually a big power play from Disney and what they're doing there. I will say, so watching Mulan is beautiful. It's really, really well shot. The story wasn't more special to me than the animated film. So I would actually not put it as high as 81%. I think where we're sitting with I'm Thinking of Ending Things, I think it deserves its high rating from a critical standpoint. And I think even though it's going to be half watched, like you guys are talking about, I think people are going to really like it. I think people who care about movies are going to really like
the people that, it's a dumb way to say it, but the people that will like it will love it.
Yes.
Yeah. I started my whole thing by saying I went into this movie with such unfair expectations, and they were exceeded.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Me too. Did you guys have anything else that you wanted to say in closing for this one?
I mean, I think the one thing people will come away with a reading list, because they're going to maybe pick up David Foster Wallace. Maybe they'll read some Pauline Kael. Maybe they'll read some William Wordsworth. Maybe they'll read some Eva H.D., who wrote the poem Bone Dog.
Right. Wow,
that's read there. And then the other thing is, it's like there are so many great.
And that was in his room, of course.
That's in his room.
Their whole conversation leading up to it is in his room.
Right. But there's great philosophical statements in here, like animals live in the present, humans cannot, so they invent hope. Things like that. I just started jotting things down as this movie was starting, because I thought, oh, okay, this sounds like an important philosophical statement. Maybe there'll be something that's the driving theme of the movie. And there's just so many of those that are rewarding to just hear well-crafted dialogue like that.
Well, and I'm glad you mentioned, adding to the reading list from it. I think I want to bring up, if people want to see a movie that's about David Foster Wallace, there's a great movie called The End of the Tour that has Jason Segel and Jesse Eisenberg in it. And it's talking about some of the things that were happening in David Foster Wallace's life towards in the last couple of years of his life. And I love that movie. It's one that a lot of people haven't seen, but it's really special. You should go out there and watch that too. A lot of the hosts on The Next Reel use this cool thing called Flickchart, and it is a cool site where you can go and create a tournament-style stack ranking of your movie preferences. I have a ranking there where I rank every movie that we see on this show and any movie that they talk about on the main show that I've seen and all that stuff. And this one, ranking this movie was really difficult there. I actually had to do it 3 times and then figure out which one made the most sense to me based on what came out from it. So
wait, why did you have to do it 3 times? I don't get it.
Well, because I did it and then I wasn't sure if I really agreed with where it sat. Like I had to look at it and I was like, does that make sense? Like it was really kind of crazy. So I did it 3 different times.
It's like defeating the idea of Flickchart.
Well, I'm not a purist in these battles. So, but so I want to tell you guys about the battles that I had and see if you agree with where it sits. If for these movies, for the ones that you've seen. So for me, so my middle point right now is Prometheus, which is higher than a lot of people is for Prometheus, but that's from the Aliens universe. Right. So it beat Prometheus, but then it lost to Heat.
No.
Oh, you would say it's better than Heat?
Really? Not by far, but I think there's just more to hang on to.
I have huge issues with Heat. I love it. I think Heat is an overrated piece of. Yeah.
We're talking about the movie.
The Michael Mann movie.
Are you talking about the idea? Oh, got it.
No. Because it is summer. Okay, yes, I know. But that's me.
There's too much heat this summer. It lost to Heat just because it's so darn hot. Yes. But then it lost to The Martian.
Disagree?
Yes.
Do you say disagree, Tommy?
Yep.
So I just recently watched The Martian again, and I actually liked it more seeing it this time. And then I had it losing to Little Sister, which, Tommy, you probably haven't seen, but it was a trailer rewind movie that we did.
Oh, my. That's right. I haven't thought about that one in a while.
So Little Sister for me comes up where it seems like it was more of an emotional move for me. I think this movie is smarter than Little Sister, but Little Sister hit me in an emotional way, and that matters to me. I had it losing to Panic Room. I had it losing to Snowpiercer. And I had it losing to All About Nina, which is another trailer rewind movie, which again, now we're talking about hitting me in the feels, right?
Yes, you are.
And while this movie is so wonderful, and I don't want to take anything away from it, I didn't it didn't bring me along emotionally. It made me giddy to watch it in a I love movies kind of way, but it didn't hit me the emotional way that I wanted it to. So I will say that this conversation definitely did, but but the movie itself did not. The last thing that it did is then it beat Mr. Nobody. So it sits kind of right in the middle of my flick chart list, and it sits at 118 out of 237. And then, so looking at the letterboxd for me, I mean, I love that you guys loved it so much. I want to love it so much, but you compare it to Eternal Sunshine for me. Eternal Sunshine has this emotional place for me. This movie, I just think, is super smart and super wonderful. So I gave it a 2.5.
You can also respect it more,
right?
than,
and that's what it is. So I gave it
Sure.
a 2.5, right in the middle for me, just like my flick chart showed up, and definitely a like. So how do you guys feel about it?
Okay, so it on my flick chart, out of 634 movies, it came in at number 17.
Wow.
I love this. This is, like I said, these are movies that because there were some tough ones, but I will always say I will always err on the side of going with a film that's giving me something to contemplate, something to come back to. There are strong, solid favorites that it beat out. But because to me, it has something important to say, it's going to give me something to chew on and think over for a very, very long time. So
for context, tell me what it lost to then on your chart.
So it lost to Aaron Brockovich.
Oh, wow. Okay.
It lost to Diabolique, and it lost to The Martian.
Interesting.
But it beat out things like, and this was tough for me, Booksmart. But I love. See, here's the thing. I love books. It's a flick chart.
Blasphemy there.
No. It is, and I love Booksmart. But what do you take away from Booksmart? To me, there are life lessons. There are things to ponder that I will come to over and over again. Booksmart will always make me laugh, but I will always delve into that artier side. I will always I love Terrence Malick. I will always go to that level of things.
Those two movies, in ways, thematically, are diametrically opposed. One is about capturing the last essences of youth. Yes. The other one is trying to possibly deal with the existential dread of that we're all worm food.
Oh, yes.
Exactly. Fun sentence to say out loud.
Yes. So it was challenging. But for me, I on a re-rank, it may come down a little bit, but I had such a great time, and I love digging into something like this and giving me something to think about. So for me, it's a 5-star on Letterboxd.
And a like, of course.
And a like, of course.
Tommy, where's the ranking for you?
On my flick chart, it's the last movie that I've seen.
Yeah.
Because I don't do flick chart.
No, I know that's why.
It's a 4.5 because I've only watched it once, and I'm not comfortable rating something a 5 until I've watched it again. I'm pretty sure it will move up to a 5. So it's just me being like, I'm too special to give something a 5. But again, I started this podcast by saying math might be a masterpiece, and I still stand by that.
That's awesome. And I think
a dislike. What?
No,
I just wanted to throw a twist in there.
I will say that, my ranking, because it's so middling, it brings our average down to 3. But I think I feel much more positive about this movie than my ranking gives it. So it's going to sit at 3 for us. But I think it's a much better movie than that number gives it. Hey, don't mess with my numbers on that. So where do we go from here? October is a really, really strange month. We don't really know what's coming out. We don't know if we feel safe enough to go to theaters yet,
but there's still a lot of good options
are hitting there. But there are good options there. So we're holding on to a couple different things in our mind. The one that we know for sure that we may try to tackle is The Trial of the Chicago 7. It's an Aaron Sorkin movie. It's coming out on Netflix on October 16th. Mm-hmm. That's the one that we're sure it's kind of like going to sit for us no matter what. We can do that in October if we get there. Wonder Woman 1984 is still slated to come out in theaters on October 2nd. I still don't believe it. I don't think they're going to do it, but Tenet made $100 million this weekend. So I don't know. I don't think I can make anyone go to a theater to watch it, thow. So we're going to make a decision.
What if we could? What a weird power for this podcast.
Yeah. You're a subscriber, you go now. But so we're still trying to decide about October, but it's probably going to be one of those two films unless something else pops up there that makes a whole lot more sense for us. For the main show, they are currently in a series about the Best Picture nominated foreign films. Next one up is Life is Beautiful, which is a fantastic film, and I am super looking forward to their talk about Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, which is almost always in my top 10 of movies, so I'm excited to get it on my flick chart going forward. And then also on the Marvel Movie Minute, Robin Kyler wrapping up The Incredible Hulk, which is amazing. And they're already playing the minutes for Iron Man 2. So look for that coming soon. It is the MCU Marvel Movie Minute is such an incredible project, and these guys are killing it. Actually, the pandemic has given them a chance to catch up a bit on the MCU. Yes. So I don't think they're going to make their way to it, but it's super fun that we get some to make up some ground here with our minutes as we go. I talked about it a bit in the show open, so all you wonderful people in the world, make sure to come join us on Discord at thenextreel.com. Let us know that you want to hang out on our server, where you can geek out on movies and other things from throughout the entertainment universe and have deep discussions about everything, just like we did tonight. Come join our gang and interact with us on the internet. It is super safe for quarantine. That's where we'll keep the conversation going, but for this one, see you later, Tommy Handsome.
We just podcasted all over you.
And one more word from Steve Sarmento.
Hondo.
At The Next Reel. When the movie ends, our conversation begins. Till next.